Quinn Buckner, Fox Sports Indiana analyst, and he's watched a lot of basketball, a lot of Game 7s, been around some of the great players, played with some of the great players of all time, and good to have you back on the show, Buck. How are you?
I'm great, Dan. How are you?
I'm good, but trying to figure out going into this Game 7. Let me start with the Indiana Pacers with and I said they might be too young to realize exactly what they're doing. I know they learned from last year, or at least you would think, but you've been around this team. What do you expect tonight?
I think there's a lot of truth to that. They really don't understand what they're involved in. Getting the Game 7s are really, winning championships is hard, and I can't express that with enough passion. That's just hard to do, and I think it's one of the things, frankly, that people got a sense of in this context. David West had 103 temperature, and David West came and played in a game that you're probably not going to play 9 times out of 10. But as you go through your athletic mortality, just the reality of life and what happens as you go through the mortality of being an athlete, these chances are few and far between. Well, these young guys don't necessarily know that. And what I say about it with David West, that's why he played such an inspired game. And if you're in these situations, you have to take them as they're here today. There is no guarantee for tomorrow. And that's the part that I don't know necessarily is necessarily in this young team's mind. But having said that, there is the other side of the coin, which suggests that because you don't take it with that kind of sincerity, you might be able to get through it. I don't take that position. I take it, here's what we've got, here's the opportunity. David West has this great tattoo on him, Carpe Diem, seize the day, and that's what they have to do.
Explain to me Roy Hibbert's behavior. Now, out of nowhere, with those comments at the press conference, you're around him, is that different than what you see from him?
Absolutely. Totally out of character. Totally out of character. Got carried away, and this may be a bit a part of what we're discussing now is guys don't really realize what they're involved in. I've never heard him say anything like that. I was very surprised from both aspects, both completely wrong, and he is a really good kid, and I know he feels genuinely, he regrets what he says. There's no doubt about it, and it's just, listen, there's no two ways about it. It's wrong, and it's just out of character for Roy.
And then the way he's played, all this good that he built up, that's the shame of this, that he's had a coming out party, and then you have a great game, and you forced a Game 7. But it was something he wanted to get off his chest about, I think, that people overlook the Pacers or, that somehow we're surprised that they're there in a Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals. Well,
I think the one part, about not noticing what the Pacers have done, I think he did feel that may have necessarily happened. The other comment is just wrong. No way, shape, or form should have been involved. Because one of the challenges you have when you're in a market the size of the Pacers, you don't get the same amount of coverage. And I think his point was, and I can't speak for him, was that as a Pacer who's had that kind of consistent success, I think he thought he should have deserved a better position on the all-defensive team. Because that's really what the question was about.
Yeah.
Was where he should be on the all-defensive team. Now, from where he came into the league to where he has gotten to today, Dan, he is much improved. He got in foul trouble all the time because he could not understand the rule of verticality and just hadn't played pro basketball. It was the learning curve, and he's learned that, and now he's involved in a highly competitive series, and he's just trying to make sure that he's able to play successfully tonight. Because this game, as you well know, for Miami is huge based upon what's happened throughout the series and where Bosh and Wade have been as part of that series. And everybody's talking about you got LeBron back with Cleveland and all that. It's going to be a highly competitive game, and I'm anxious to see who handles the pressure because I think as much as handling, having energy and effort, I think managing emotions in these games is the most important part of the game.
He's Quinn Buckner, Fox Sports Indiana, former NBA and college star, joining us, Dan Patrick Show, trying to figure out what LeBron is thinking with Wade and Bosh. You played with great players. You saw them have these moments, whether it was a Game 6 or Game 7, with everything at stake. But does LeBron hit the Wayback machine and play Cleveland Cavaliers-style LeBron, or does he trust these guys who haven't earned that trust recently?
Well, that's a great question, and it happened to me in this context. I was with a friend of mine. I was with Charles Barkley, actually, when he was playing, I think it was in Houston. No, and in Phoenix, they were struggling anyway. So the question he asked, it was a great question. Do you let those guys start and see what they do, or do you take it over from the beginning? And I think it's all a matter of your personality and understanding what you have going through the course of the game. Because first of all, if you take it over from the beginning, it's going to require an extraordinary amount of energy to be able to do that. If they don't get going. If they get going, that's fine. Or do you wait to see if they get going, which is very, very conceivable. I think tonight, those two guys play well. And then you find a way to plug in the holes later, which is what he's been doing for the majority of the year and recently. So it's a really interesting question, but it's not one I think can be fully addressed until you're in the throes of the game and you kind of recognize being in them in the locker room, just kind of understanding. This may sound stupid, seeing their energy, feeling how they're feeling, and watch them get off to a start. If they get going to a good start, you can stay out of it. If they don't, you have to find a way to keep your team in it until something else happens, and you find a way to keep your team in it until somehow they do come alive or somebody comes alive. I mean, that's really what you have to do in these circumstances.
What's the best performance you ever saw with everything at stake, whether playing against or with somebody?
Oh, boy. I mean, Larry is, I've been blessed. I had the good fortune of playing with Larry. When it's on the line, there's no better player that I've been with, seen, or anything like that. Larry has just been one of the phenomenal players that I've ever seen in the circumstances. But I have to say, I believe in Utah, Michael Jordan, with when he was ill and it's on the line, that performance tops anything I've ever seen in my life. And I've been blessed from an athletic standpoint to be able to see a lot of them. But the 38 was a guy, because I went into the locker room. I didn't eat. Normally we'd play golf and all of that. I didn't do that with him at that time. But what happened was I went in the locker room having known he was sick, and I walked into a room, Dan. It was completely dark, and he was lying on his side. And I said to him, "You all right?" And he just basically growled. I'm serious. It was unbelievable.
Were you with him the night before?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't with him the night before. Thank goodness I wasn't with him. I mean, I don't want to get sick or anything, but I wasn't with him the night before. They were up. I was working at the time for NBC, believe it or not, and so I was actually doing some other business.
Do you think that it was more food poisoning or the flu?
I don't know. Tim Grover, who's this trainer, is said, and he's been adamant that it was food poisoning. I don't know what it was. I do know that, I'm telling you, it was eerie walking into the room. It was completely dark. And Phil kind of walked by me, and I looked up at Phil, and he just kind of gave me, a little nod that he, just kind of leave the room, which was fine. But it was one of those things that it was one of the eeriest things I've ever seen. And then to see him perform like that under duress, that may be the best performance. That's the best performance I've seen.
I know you're friends with Mike, but does Jordan ever talk about the LeBron comparisons with him? As competitive as Michael is?
No, I've never asked him, and he never brings it up. So,
can you also verify this? When you were there with Roby with Bird, and you guys were, what was the nickname? The Beers Brothers?
Well, something to that effect. But
okay. So, come on. This is well past the statute of limitations here, Bob. So, you guys are playing the Bulls in the first round of the playoffs? Does this sound right? Where you and Bird and Roby are out having beers, and the Chicago Bulls cheerleaders were buying Larry beers, and then Larry had an unbelievable game the next day and then walked off the floor and said to the cheerleader, "Thanks for the beers"?
That sounds like a Roby version of the story.
Well, it is Roby. Roby's the one who told me the story. See, you're good with secrets.
Like a Roby version. I don't. Hey, Dad, I confirm, neither confirm nor deny anything like that. I don't recall that
one. Hey, Buck, it's great to have you on. Good to talk to you again. Have fun tonight.
Thanks. Take care of yourself.
All right, Quinn Buckner. All of a sudden, I love that story. That the Bulls cheerleaders buying beers for Bird, trying to get him drunk, hungover. And Bird went off, I think, that elimination game. And then he walked off the floor right by the cheerleader. "Thanks for the beers."